Hi Herb, hi Facebook, I am Shayna. Welcome to Apollo. I am the clinic manager here.
And my name is Brian Hendon. I am the founder of Apollo Applied Research.
And my name is Jenna, and I oversee the research here at Apollo.
So I'll give you a quick background story about how Apollo came to be. I am the co-founder of what is, in my humble opinion, maybe the finest pain clinic in North America, well, definitely in Canada. And what I can say is a lot of the patients there were suffering with a lot of chronic pain, and they were telling the physicians that medical cannabis helps their chronic pain. The physicians at the time, this is back in 2012, were not comfortable prescribing marijuana because there was no evidence. So that's when I decided to create a research company, Apollo, and create and study and validate the fact that medical cannabis is an effective medication for many, many patients. And today we've treated thousands of patients and convinced hundreds of doctors across this great country that medical cannabis is a great option. So on to Jenna, talking a little bit more about the research.
Yeah, so I'll just take a few moments of your time to tell you about some of the research studies that we have going on here at Apollo. So currently we have 2 large studies that are recruiting. So I'll go into a little bit of detail about them, but if you think that you or anyone you know would be eligible or interested in participating in this research, definitely reach out to us. Our email address is info@apolloresearch.ca. So first of all, we have a chronic pain research study that's ongoing, recruiting patients with a variety of chronic pain conditions and following them to see how medical cannabis is helping with their symptoms and their overall general quality of life. The other study that we have ongoing is a PTSD study. And again, this study we're looking at how medical cannabis is helping patients who are suffering with PTSD. So like I said, if you know anyone or if you would be eligible for either of these studies, reach out to us. This research is important for so many reasons, but really what we want to do at Apollo is improve access to medical cannabis through our research. So, for example, to get this covered by insurance companies for patients to improve affordability, but also just to improve awareness among the healthcare community of the effectiveness of medical cannabis.
We heard you were going to speak up. Sorry, guys.
Sorry. My voice doesn't project too well, but I'll try to speak louder.
Turn up the volume.
Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, okay. We were just reading the comments and questions here, so I just wanted to shout out to everybody that's saying hi to us. Sorry that you can't hear us. So one of the questions from Pixie was, what do you recommend for fibromyalgia sufferers?
It's a great question. The answer is, it's actually impossible to say overarching that there's one perfect strain for patients suffering with fibromyalgia. What I can tell you is that many patients using strains with high levels of CBD have found it to be very, very effective. But what we have heard from time to time is that sometimes it's not effective enough. So then what we would recommend is you use a strain with a little bit of THC in it and see if that helps. And what you may find is that CBD alone isn't enough, but CBD in combination with THC is incredibly effective for treating fibromyalgia. But I recommend patients start out with just using a product that is purely CBD at first.
Absolutely. Great starting point. The next question here is from Neil. Do you recommend using cannabis to treat chronic migraines? I'll be honest, I have I get migraines. Indica for myself has been one of the best plants or strains for me. We have lots of patients that are dealing with migraines as well. I find that a higher THC works best, but everybody is so different. So again, like Brian said, with every patient that's just starting off using cannabis, CBD is a really great starting point. It does help a lot, but THC might be more effective.
But yes, we've heard from countless patients suffering with chronic migraines that cannabis is incredibly effective.
Yeah. And we have a lot of patients with migraines in our research studies as well, in our chronic pain study.
Yeah. Can you guys hear us better? For Kaylin, does it help for anxiety?
So, yes. What we found is that, in fact, I'll give you an interesting little backstory. Apollo started out doing a large-scale chronic pain study, and what we found was that patients were reporting incredible results looking at anxiety and other issues. So what we've now begun doing is studying some of these other aspects. So looking at pain, but more specifically, some of the things that are associated with pain. So that's sleep and anxiety. All these are tied together, and what we found is that when patients are using medical cannabis, all three of these encompassing improve altogether as one.
Awesome. For Justin, thank you. He just said what you guys do is amazing work, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you.
Thank you very
Justin.
much. Appreciate it.
How close are we in Kansas to medically passing? So we're in Canada, so unfortunately we can't answer that question for you.
But federally, it doesn't seem like the U.S. is going to come along that quickly. But state by state, I can tell you that I was actually in New York doing a presentation not that long ago. Well, actually, sitting in on a presentation regarding our research not that long ago. And I can tell you that 2 years prior, we could not have had that academic conversation. But I do believe it's just a matter of time. State by state, slowly but surely, and hopefully one day federally, the United States is going to come on board.
Brian or Janine, what about patients diagnosed with ADHD and ADD?
It's amazing. So it's not actually proven, but what we've found is that patients suffering with ADHD have told their psychiatrists and or whoever is prescribing them other medications, so Concerta, Ritalin, Adderall, that family, that they no longer found the need for that medication because medical cannabis is being so incredibly effective. So what's now happened is a lot of psychiatrists are referring their patients to Apollo to treat their ADHD instead of the traditional Western medications.
All right. For Caesar, Caesar wrote, does cannabis help with not being able to eat as I usually do? Last time I smoked, I had more an urge to actually eat. So I would say that it depends on the patient. I mean, cannabis gives a lot of patients, the munchies. Some patients it doesn't.
And it really depends on specifically what the issue is and why you're not eating. So, for instance, a lot of patients use medical cannabis when they're going through chemotherapy and things like that. Cannabis is very, very effective, depending on how you use it, as for anti-nausea. So if you have real problems eating, cannabis is, depending on how you use it, a very effective tool.
All right. So I just have a quick fun fact for you guys. So scientists detected traces of cannabis in pipes found in William Shakespeare's garden. So
very interesting.
Yeah, that explains some of the verbiage in his passages that I can't read still. Will a patient have to carry a card stating that they were prescribed the marijuana?
That's a great question. So the answer is, if a police officer stops you, what you should carry with you is potentially, well, not potentially, the best thing for you to carry with you is the actual container that the marijuana was sent to you in, because on that container, it will have the prescribing physician, your name on it, and the actual product that you were prescribed. So not that all police officers are going to actually understand what they're looking at, but that is in fact the actual prescription. So if you're one of our patients and the police were to call us, we would absolutely tell them that you are a patient. But to be on the safe side, what we recommend is that patients actually carry their cannabis in the container it was sent to them in. But licensed producers do send a card with them that does validate the fact that they are prescribed medical cannabis. So most times a police officer will be quite satisfied with that.
All right. Next one. Haven wants to know, do you support gray market dispensaries?
So Haven, that's a great question. I would say that we do not have an issue with them. They have been kind enough to send us many, many patients. At the same time, I support the fact that everything has to be done legally. So as soon as it's legal to operate in that capacity, absolutely. But until it's legal, I don't want any patient to get in trouble because the police were to raid the location. But in my opinion, the demand for medical cannabis is so great and the need for it is so great. If everybody just went to a licensed producer, there would not be any cannabis at any licensed producer. The demand and the effect is so incredible that dispensaries are actually, in my opinion, potentially helping licensed producers for the time being, because I don't believe, I think that the demand and the supply is so great that I think, there's space for everybody.
Absolutely. Next question was from Beth. Hi, Beth. What are the differences in, I can't read. What are the differences in benefits in edibles or smoking cannabis?
What are the differences?
And in the benefits, yeah.
So if we look at somebody suffering with chronic pain, we can break it down into what we would say, for somebody who needs fast acting as opposed to, prolonged and sustained effect. If someone is suffering with chronic pain in that moment and it's overwhelming, if you ingest it, it will actually take a fair bit of time before it hits its full strength. If you use a vaporizer or you smoke it, you'll have full onset in just a few moments. Now that being said, if somebody suffers with chronic pain for a sustained period of time, it actually is a more effective treatment if you use oils potentially or any other edible that you prefer, and you have a consistent regime, a consistent methodologies, and this way the chronic pain will always be in balance. And so if there's breakthrough pain during that process, by all means, vape or smoke. But for prolonged and more efficient use of a medication, it would be more effective to ingest it.
All right. From Brett, what are your thoughts on treatment with patients with epilepsy?
So we've had amazing success. Our youngest patient is 2 years old, and I think our oldest patient's, actually not far from 100. But I can tell you that we've seen patients from every age suffer with epilepsy and had very, very successful treatment. Not every single patient has it worked flawlessly for, but it's worked for enough patients that I can tell you it's worth a shot.
All right. This is an interesting question. I've heard this from patients. Jesse wants to know, what is a new thing I heard about taking THC doses anally?
Great question. We haven't done much research on that specifically, but I have heard that it is very, very effective. And if you look at the process, it would make sense that it would be effective.
Yeah. So many questions, guys. Thank you so much for all your support. Have you seen? We've already talked about the ADHD. Tips on getting clean.
Tips on getting clean. When you say clean, do we know what that means?
No.
So in terms of getting clean, I can't actually answer that because I'm not actually sure what it means. But in terms of not using other drugs, in terms of, what I can tell you is, if patients are concerned about getting, addicted to it, I can tell you that if someone's using cannabis, starts using cannabis regularly over the age of 21, it's about a 3% chance that you're going to become addicted. And I can tell you that it's a fraction of the addictive nature of other, substances such as alcohol and other narcotics. It's not. If you look at the profile of danger and addiction, cannabis is incredibly safe in comparison.
And patients often report that they're able to cut down on their use of alcohol or other drugs in general when they start using medical cannabis.
So Nick wants to know CBD on Alzheimer's disease and dementia.
So we have not actually concluded any research in this area, but what we can say anecdotally is that we are hearing it's fantastically effective. We have patients using it who suffer with dementia and Alzheimer's, and patients and their families are patients' families are reporting back to us that it's a very, very effective tool. We cannot say that using validated evidence because we haven't done enough research on it, but I am optimistic that CBD is going to be an amazing tool for not just that, but also traumatic brain injury. And CBD in itself stands to be considered as a fantastic neuroprotective medication in the future.
Yeah. So lots of patients or lots of viewers on Facebook here are asking us about pregnancy, the effects of using cannabis. I mean, we don't recommend it.
So overarchingly, if when we look at what physicians and literature would tell us, there is no reason why we would tell anybody, yes, use it while you're pregnant. Now, if there's always extenuating circumstances, but no one actually fully knows the potential harm to the child. So for us to endorse it, we just could never do that at this point.
There's just not the literature out there right now to suggest that you can't use it or you should be using it.
Safely.
I mean, you should really be referring to your doctor with your prescribing doctor if there's extenuating circumstances, but there's no literature currently to support using it.
Yeah. And this is the last question for you this evening. Thank you guys so much for your support and all your comments. We'll definitely try and get back to you as soon as possible for that. Question is from Chinada. How does medical marijuana affect person with chronic depression?
It's a great question. So what I can tell you is we have a lot of patients suffering with anxiety and chronic depression. medical cannabis is incredible. And I'll just leave you with one story that I totally loved. A patient of ours, his wife passed away several years ago, and he started using medical cannabis. He actually suffers with chronic pain, but also had anxiety, depression, and sleep issues. He started using medical cannabis, and what he told me is that he was able to clean out his wife's closet. His wife passed away years ago, and he didn't have the strength to, move on. And cannabis has given him, in his opinion, cannabis has given him the ability to sort of take the next step that he was sitting on and couldn't move forward for years. So cannabis has proven to be incredibly effective for a lot of patients suffering with a lot of, mental health issues.
Yes, absolutely. On that note, one fun fact to end this for this evening, and again, thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be back with Herb live streaming shortly, in about a month or so. So the last one. The first arrest of marijuana possession and selling in the U.S. occurred in Denver, Colorado on October 2nd in 1937.
Things have really changed in Denver since then.
Yeah,
Denver has changed.
Big time. So thanks, guys, and hope you have a great night.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.